My name is Madison Brooks, and before I tell you how I dismantled the man who left me to die, I want to pause and ask, where in the world are you tuning in from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I read every single one, and seeing how far this story travels means more to me than you know. While you are down there, please hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell, and give this video a thumbs up. It helps ensure stories like mine reach the people who need to hear them most. 3 years ago, I sat in a windowless consultation room on the 4th floor of St. Jude's Medical Center. The air smelled of industrial disinfectant and stale coffee. Dr. Reynolds, a soft-spoken oncologist with tired eyes, placed a manila folder on the desk between us. I was 28 years old. I had spent the previous 6 months working 60-hour weeks as a junior associate at a logistics firm, ignoring the persistent ache in my lower abdomen and the bone-deep fatigue that no amount of sleep could fix. I thought I had an ulcer. I thought I was stressed. Instead, Dr. Reynolds told me I had stage 3 ovarian cancer. It had already metastasized to my peritoneal lining. "We need to start aggressive chemotherapy immediately, Madison," he said, his voice measured, devoid of false hope. "Next week, if possible." Followed by major debulking surgery. The room tilted. My hands shook so violently I couldn't open my purse to pull out my keys. I stumbled out to the parking garage, sat in my second-hand sedan, and cried until I couldn't breathe. The cold steering wheel was the only solid thing in the universe. I was 28, entirely alone in a city 300 miles from my hometown, staring at a calendar that suddenly looked like a countdown. When the initial panic receded into a dull, terrifying ache, I reached for my phone. Naturally, I called my father, Richard. Growing up, Richard had always been the son around which our household revolved. A successful estate attorney with a booming voice and a tailored wardrobe, his approval was the currency my mother, my younger sister Sophia, and I had spent our entire lives chasing. I had spent my youth trying to be the perfect, self-sufficient daughter, the one who got scholarships, the one who never caused trouble, the one who handled her own problems. But this was not a problem I could handle alone. I needed my dad. The phone rang 4 times before he picked up. In the background, I could hear a chorus of frantic laughter, clinking champagne flutes, and the rustle of heavy fabrics. "Madison?" Richard's voice was crisp, preoccupied. "Make it quick, sweetheart. The caterers are arguing with the florist over the table centerpieces, and your mother is about to lose her mind." "Dad?" I choked out, a fresh wave of tears spilling down my cheeks. "Dad, I'm at the hospital. I just got my test results back. It's cancer. It's stage 3. I'm scared, Dad." "I need—" "Madison, please," he interrupted, his tone instantly hardening into that familiar clipped annoyance he reserved for inconvenience. "Can we not do the dramatic routine today? You know Sophia's wedding is in 3 weeks. We are up to our eyeballs in final payments, seating charts, and rehearsal planning. Your sister has been stressed out for months trying to make this day perfect." I froze. "Dad, did you hear me? I have stage 3 cancer. I have to start chemo on Monday." He let out a long, theatrical sigh through his teeth. "I heard you, Madison. But you always have a knack for picking the most self-centered moments to create a crisis. Remember your college graduation when you insisted on having dinner at that seafood place that ruined the night? Look, if you're feeling unwell, go to the pharmacy, take some time off work. We simply do not have the bandwidth to fly out there or entertain another one of your hypochondriac episodes right now. The family is entirely focused on making sure Sophia's day goes smoothly. We will talk after the honeymoon, okay? Try not to ruin this for your sister." The line went dead. I stared at the glowing screen. The silence in my car was deafening. He hadn't asked what the doctor said. He hadn't asked if I was in pain. He hadn't asked if I needed money or a ride or a hand to hold. I was 28, facing a life-threatening illness, and my existence had just been dismissed as an inconvenient distraction from custom table linens and silver cutlery. I didn't call back. I didn't text my mother, who I knew would only parrot Richard's sentiments, nor Sophia, who had spent her entire life consuming every ounce of oxygen in our family dynamic. That afternoon, sitting alone in a dim parking garage, something inside me broke, and then reassembled itself into steel. The next 2 years were a blur of poison and iron determination. I underwent 6 rounds of high-dose chemotherapy that left my throat feeling like it was lined with broken glass and caused my hair to fall out in clumpy handfuls. I endured an 8-hour surgery that removed half my reproductive system and left a jagged, raised scar across my lower torso. I spent nights shivering in a cold apartment, hugging a plastic bucket, unable to keep down water, listening to the ticking of the wall clock. I paid for it all myself. I took out medical loans. I liquidated my meager savings. I worked remotely from my hospital bed whenever the nausea subsided enough for me to focus on a laptop screen. Not once did Richard, my mother, or Sophia call to check on me. When Sophia posted her wedding photos online, a lavish $100,000 extravaganza funded entirely by my father, I saw the happy family posing under a canopy of white roses. Not a single person in those photos had noticed or cared that I wasn't there. By the end of the second year, the treatment ceased. The scans came back clear. No evidence of disease. I was alive, I was free of the poison, and I was entirely transformed. My hair grew back, darker and thicker than before. The soft, eager-to-please girl who had begged for her father's love had died on the operating table. In her place stood a woman who understood the cold, absolute power of self-reliance. And then last Tuesday, after 24 months of absolute silence, my phone illuminated with an incoming call from Richard Brooks. I stared at the screen for 3 long rings before swiping to answer. I didn't say hello. I just waited, listening to the sound of his ragged breathing on the other end. Madison? His voice was unrecognizable. The booming, authoritative tone of the successful estate attorney was entirely gone, replaced by a frail, trembling rasp. Madison, thank God you picked up. I didn't know if this was still your number. It's me, I said evenly, leaning back against my office desk. Madison, I need help, he sobbed, breaking down with a theatrical desperation that might have moved me 3 years ago. Everything has fallen apart. Sophia's husband left her 6 months ago after draining their joint accounts, and she moved back in with us. But she's completely overwhelmed. Then, 3 weeks ago, I collapsed at the office. He paused, clearly waiting for me to gasp, to ask what happened, to offer sympathy. I offered nothing but silence. It's my liver, Madison, he continued, his voice dropping to a panicked whisper. It's advanced. The doctor says I need specialized round-the-clock care, home nursing, and expensive experimental treatments that our insurance won't fully cover. Your mother is a nervous wreck. Sophia says she can't handle looking after an invalid. It's too traumatic for her. We spent so much on the wedding and then the legal fees. I'm looking at mountain of bills, Madison. I can't do this alone. He took a shivering breath before landing on the true reason for his call. I heard through an old colleague that you got promoted to vice president of your firm, that you're doing incredibly well financially. Madison, please, you have to come home. We need you to coordinate my care, manage the house, and help us cover these medical bills. Family has to stick together in a crisis. You're my daughter, please. I listened to him gasp for air, listening to the exact same raw terror that had consumed me in that hospital garage 2 years ago. He was terrified of dying. He was terrified of being alone. And most of all, he was terrified of facing the consequences of a life spent consuming everyone around him without ever giving a shred of real love in return. I felt no rage. I felt no satisfaction. I only felt a cool, crystalline clarity. I drew in a slow breath and spoke 4 quiet words into the mic. I am too busy. Before he could process what I had said, before he could utter another desperate plea or mount another attack on my character, I ended the call. I didn't block his number right away. Instead, I set my phone down and looked out the floor-to-ceiling windows of my high-rise office overlooking the city skyline. He had chosen custom table linens and silver cutlery over his dying child. Now he would learn what it meant to navigate the darkest valley of his life, with only the empty luxury he had prioritized. The story didn't end with that phone call, though. When Richard realized I wasn't coming, the real test of my transformation began, and the true extent of the life I had built without them was finally put to the test. Within minutes of hanging up, my phone began to buzz relentless notifications. First came the text messages from my mother, packed with guilt and fury, accusing me of being heartless, cruel, and a disgrace to the family name. Then came a frantic, weeping voicemail from Sophia, claiming I was sentencing our father to death because I was still holding a petty grudge over her wedding day. They even roped in distant aunts and uncles, who sent messages scolding me for abandoning my filial duty in a time of medical tragedy. It was a masterclass in projection. They wanted to rewrite history, transforming themselves into innocent victims, and me into the ruthless villain, completely erasing the fact that they had abandoned me when I was 28 and facing my own mortality. 2 days later, there was a sharp knock at my front door. I opened it to find Sophia standing on my porch. She looked exhausted, her usual polished demeanor cracked, her eyes swollen. For a second, looking at her, I felt a ghost of the old sisterly instinct rise up in my chest, the urge to comfort her, to fix things, to play the responsible big sister I had always been forced to be. "Madison," she breathed, stepping toward me. "Thank God you're home. Dad is getting worse. You have to come back with me. You're the strong one. You always have been. You have the money. You know how to deal with doctors. You can fix this." I stood firmly in the doorway, my posture straight, refusing to let her step inside. "Sophia," I said, my tone low and even. "When I called Dad from the hospital 2 years ago, crying because I had stage 3 cancer, do you remember what he told me?" Sophia blinked, her jaw dropping slightly. "Madison, that was different. We were stressed. It was my wedding. He told me I was self-centered," I interrupted smoothly. "He told me the family was too busy with your table linens and centerpieces to care about my life. He hung up on me. And for 2 years, while I vomited poison into a bucket and had my organs surgically removed, not a single one of you checked to see if I was dead or alive. He was wrong, okay?" Sophia snapped, her despair instantly shifting into entitled anger. "He made a mistake. But he's your father. How can you stand there and be so cold? Are you really going to let him suffer just to prove a point?" "I am not trying to prove anything," I replied softly. "I am simply honoring the rules of the family he built. When someone in this family is sick, we don't drop everything. We stay busy with our own lives. He taught me that." "You monster," she whispered, tears spilling over her mascara. "You're really going to let him die alone?" "I survived alone," I said. "He has you and Mom. That's more than he gave me." I closed the door gently in her face, locking it with a firm click. That was 6 months ago. I didn't give them a dime. I didn't manage his care. I didn't step back into the golden cage of being their reliable scapegoat. Instead, I hired a lawyer to ensure that my estate, my medical power of attorney, and my financial assets were entirely protected and designated to a cancer research foundation in the event of my death. I eventually learned through a mutual acquaintance that Richard had to sell their massive suburban house to cover his medical expenses and live out his care in a modest facility. My mother had to downsize into a small apartment, and Sophia was forced to take a full-time job for the first time in her life to support herself. The hollow, picture-perfect facade they had traded my life for collapsed under the weight of its own greed. Sometimes people ask me if I feel guilty. They ask if revenge feels sweet, or if I regret not taking the high road and forgiving them. The truth is, revenge wasn't about hurting them. It was about protecting the woman I fought so hard to keep alive. The high road would have meant letting them drain my hard-earned peace and money to patch up a house built on neglect. Walking away wasn't cruel. It was an act of absolute self-preservation. I am 31 years old now. My scans remain clear, my career is thriving, and my life is filled with people who love me actively, fiercely, and unconditionally. I survived the poison in my body, and I survived the poison in my family. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If my journey resonated with you, or if you've ever had to set hard boundaries to save your own life, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on that bell notification so you never miss another video. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and remember that your life is worth fighting for, even if you have to fight for it alone.